Welcome back, friend. For those who are new here, I'm Patrina with Homegrown Florida, and testing your soil is a really smart move, as long as you're using the right soil testing kit. Otherwise, it can be a complete disaster in your garden. I used the wrong soil test for a number of years, and I ended up messing up my soil in so many ways, and I've been working at it for a couple years now to get it back right. And each year I do a soil test right around this time of year, which is the start of our biggest, most beautiful season, fall through winter, which is our biggest growing season down here in Florida, but for you it might be spring. So today we're going to walk through each one of these soil testing kits. I'm going to tell you what worked, what didn't, and I think there's going to be a few surprises in there. So the four that I use is I use this rapid test that you can get on Amazon. It's an at-home test. This guy right here is a pH meter. I don't have a case for it, but the University of Florida, I did the extension office soil test, and then I also did the MySoil test. So we're gonna start out with these right here because this was actually the first test that I ever did in my garden. They come in like these little packets. They look like pills, different color pills. And so the colors correspond to these little testing thingamajigs. I don't know what you would call these. But it tests for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and pH. I could never figure out the color of the pH. So it has these like colors that when you put your sample in here and you fill it with water and you do all the steps, there's like a whole thing that you have to do that you're supposed to match to a certain color. When it came to the pH test, it was like a totally different color than anything that was listed on here, so I never was able to figure that one out. The nitrogen test always told me mine was low, and the phosphorus test always told me that my phosphorus was low, and my potassium was always like high elevated. And so I did what anybody would do, I researched what can I put down for nitrogen and phosphorus, and I started putting down blood meal, and I started putting down bone meal. My nitrogen would come up to like deficient, from depleted to deficient on these tests, and I was like, well, the plants are growing, so I think it's fine. I mean, I was putting down pounds and pounds of this stuff into my garden. The bone meal, I just kept putting more and more and more bone meal down into the garden, and it just always said depleted. It always indicated that there was none on there, and after about a year of doing this, I was like, this can't be right. This can't be right, because there's no way that I could put that much bone meal down and not be showing some improvement, right? The plants aren't using it up that much. Also, the plants looked healthy. So I was like, why? Anyway, this is what caused me to question this one. If you're using this one, highly, highly inaccurate, because what happened was after this test, I went ahead and got my first soil test. This was last year. I used eBook Gardening. They don't have their soil test anymore, but it reminds me a lot of the MySoil test. So I'll be referencing that from time to time here. So this year, when it was time to do my soil test, and since eBook didn't have it, I thought, hey, this will be a fun experience to check out a couple different soil tests. So I did the University of Florida, and we did this one together just a couple videos ago, where we were preparing the beds, and I took my soil samples. I did 2 beds. I did bed 1 and bed 7, and I got the soil test back from the University of Florida. And let me just tell you, I was surprised and confused. My testing that I did last year with eBook told me all the things that I thought it was going to tell me, which was that I put too much bone meal, right? My phosphorus was insanely high. My potassium was pretty high. My nitrogen was okay. Like it told me all the things that the plants were telling me. So it was like, okay, that's believable. The University of Florida's test is interesting because between last year's test and this year's test, I did minimal amendments to my garden. And by minimal, I mean I only put blood meal in my garden because a lot of my tests were showing very high in a lot of different areas. I did a whole video on that. So if you're really interested in learning about what all the different nutrients are and how to get them to go higher or lower or whatever, definitely check that video out. I'll put it down in the description and at the end. I deliberately did things to keep my nutrients from getting any higher. So some of the things I did was I stopped putting amendments down, right? Bone meal is no longer allowed in my garden, at least until my numbers get better. I even stopped using compost because my organic material was so high and some of my micronutrients were so high that it could be detrimental. So I stopped using compost. I stopped using organic mulches. I still used organic mulch. I still used wood chips because I need some kind of mulch, but I used a big wood chip that would take a lot longer to break down. So I was hoping that by removing the organic mulches that break down quickly and removing the compost and removing all the amendments besides blood meal, which helps with nitrogen, that I would see a decrease in my numbers. And I did. I saw a decrease, not by a significant amount, but by enough of an amount. The part where I saw a pretty significant difference, the phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogens were steadily coming down, and that's kind of like what I expected. But all the micronutrients on the University of Florida's test seemed odd to me. They went from like wildly high to dangerously low, right? That was one thing. Then I had something, this one just throws me off to no end. And this particular one under calcium, my calcium number is 60 times higher than it was last year, with nothing added to this other than blood meal, which should not increase the calcium that high. Based on that, plus some of the inconsistencies with these numbers, the minor and the macro, or the micro and the macro nutrient numbers compared to my last year's numbers, you know, there's always going to be some differences, especially when you're switching between testing sites, right? So they do testing a certain way here in the University of Florida, and I'm sure Epic Gardening does a different style of testing with their testing kit. You know, so there's going to be variations. You're not going to get the perfect numbers, but some of these numbers are wildly different. So I got concerned. I mean, it even told me that my pH was too high. I've never had a problem with pH, right? So I'm like, man, this just doesn't seem to be making sense compared to my test from last year. And this is the bigger thing, this is the lesson that I learned, compared to how my plants are growing. Because if my pH is that high, my calcium is that high, and all my micronutrients are that low, I should be seeing problems with the leaves. I should see weird coloring. I should see disformed growth, those kinds of things. I should see a real big lack of productivity. And I wasn't seeing that. I mean, in these beds, I've grown everything from tomatoes to watermelons to greens to broccoli. Like over the past year, I've been growing all kinds of things. So the University of Florida test, I have heard, is number one, the gold standard. The only thing that I can come up with is that there's some sort of possible contamination. Whether that was when I collected it or dried it out or somewhere in shipping or maybe when it got to their office, I'm not 100% sure. But I could not look at this result and go, yeah, this is correct. So I was like, I got to figure out another way. So my first thing was I got to figure out the pH, because if my pH is really that far off, I need to get that fixed like yesterday, right? So I decided to go two routes. I decided to get a pH meter, and I decided to do a MySoil test. So this one is going to be most like the UF test in that it will scan for the same types of things. Let's talk about this one first. So I wanted to get this just to test, you know, those pH things. It doesn't do anything other than pH. Now these guys are kind of hard because you have to have perfect conditions for these to work. And by perfect conditions, I mean it can't be too hot. It has to be moist but not wet. It can't be dry. You know, the sun can't be shining on it. So I literally, for multiple days in a row, took this thing outside at night after I had watered earlier in the day to make sure it was the perfect moisture of these two beds, and checked it over a period of like a week and got the same results, which was I was actually closer to like 6.5 to 6.6. Now, This thing, I wouldn't call it most accurate, because if you just stick this in the soil without doing all the prep work, like I said, like getting it watered a few days in advance, making sure it's watered at least 6 hours before, and then going out at night once it dropped into the 70s. I mean, it was dedication to make sure that I got the right number out of this little item right here. But it does work. I just probably wouldn't recommend it in the dead of summer in Florida, because it's so hard to get it to be accurate. So anyway, I like it, but I know that there's limitations with this. But it did tell me that my pH was appropriate. So then I did MySoil test. So I ordered this, the MySoil, and they send you a little packet, and it had, or a little like plastic dish where it has like a solution in it and some other little thing in it, and you put your soil in that, and then you ship it off to them. And I got my results back pretty quickly. And let me just tell you, first off, the biggest difference between MySoil and the Florida test is this one I can actually read. This one is so hard to read and understand. I mean, I sat down, I broke out the computer, I'm talking to ChatGPT about things, like I'm like documenting ranges based off of the different websites of UF. I mean, it was not easy. And the instructions that they give you, they do give you some ranges on some of the micronutrients, but not all of them. So I mean, it was like I was doing some serious like back to school homework to figure this one out. Not easy. Sometimes they would have the interpretations, like if you look right there, the interpretation is listed on this one. But if I pull up the interpretation on the other bed, which is where? Right here, it didn't always include it. So like they definitely don't make it easy to understand these particular results. And they do say that you should, you know, talk to somebody who knows about soil based on your results. So you shouldn't just try to figure them out yourself. They say you can call them and talk to one of their master gardeners. That could be an option. I may still do that. But I went ahead and did the MySoil. Much easier to read. It has a chart that shows you what is too high, what is too low. They show it in different colors. Like, then they have the different ranges, and whether you're in the ranges or not, it really is foolproof on how easy this one is to read. So now let's compare this one to the University of Florida and the pH of this. Well, this one corresponds that the pH is good, is at 6.5 to 6.6, where UF is telling me that my pH is 7.5, right? All the other nutrients, I'm gonna go with the big ones first. Nitrogen, it said I was low. That is not unexpected here in Florida because we just went through our rainy season. It's pretty much leached everything out. It said my phosphorus was high, still high, and that tracks, right? Because last year when I did my EPIC test, it said it was really high because using all of the bone meal from this little crappy test. So it tracks that it would still be high. But the cool thing is I can see in all of the tests that it looks like it's trailing downwards. Within a year, I should be within normal range on the phosphorus. So I'm making the right decisions. My potassium on this one showed low, which is interesting because this one showed higher than last year, which once again didn't make sense to me. If I was doing all these things to reduce down these nutrients, why would my potassium be higher on this test than last year's test? It just didn't make sense to me. But this one shows it as lower, and actually into the point where I need to add more potassium into my garden. Then it goes into all the other ones like sulfur, calcium, magnesium, sodium, iron, manganese, zinc, copper, boron. All of these track compared to my test from last year. So I don't know, maybe these guys use the same testing center as EPIC did. That's my guess because it looks and feels a lot like the same. And when you look at my numbers from last year compared to the numbers from this year, based on the actions that I did, I mean, it looks appropriate. Nothing was higher than what it was last year. Everything was lower, which is what I was aiming for to bring down my numbers. Whereas this thing was showing stuff that was higher, like the calcium being 4,500, 4,594 on my calcium. And in this one, my calcium is 274, which is more in line with what last year's score was. And 4,500 is wildly high, guys. I mean, I should be seeing problems. So now I've got all these test results with all of these different, you know, measurements, and it's like, which one is right? So then I did the ultimate test. I'm calling it the ultimate test. I did a lot of research, and I determined that bean seeds were the ones that were the most impacted or sensitive to things like pH and to micronutrients. So in bed 7, I put down some Blue Lake bush green beans. They're quick, they'll germinate quickly. I'll be able to see the leaves very quickly because they grow very fast, and I can compare and look at how they do and then compare that to whether that makes sense to these tests. Which test makes the most sense? And those green beans did germinate, and they did grow, and they have their true leaves now, and I can look at the leaves and I can see that I don't see any indication of nutrient issues. I don't see excessively high levels of phosphorus. I don't see crazy high levels of calcium. I don't see super low levels of boron. You know, like I'm not seeing the things that the University of Florida is saying is wrong with my soil. But I am seeing this, right? My pH, these things, all of them germinated and came up quickly. They're not deformed leaves. They're very healthy looking. The pH seems like it's within reason. 7.5 would indicate that I would be having some problems. But 6.6, that's right within that normal range. You want to be between 6 and 7. And all of my green beans are behaving appropriately. All of the coloration on the leaves, all of the vein colorations on the leaves, all of them are indicative of what this soil test said. So I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate comments for the University of Florida's test not being my favorite, because this is the gold standard. I want to say that without a doubt. This is the gold standard. I don't know why it didn't work for me. I don't know why I got such wild and crazy numbers off of this test. I'm going to do another one. So next year, I think I'm going to do both of these and once again compare them. I am suspecting that there is some sort of contamination that happened here. Maybe it had something to do with the paper bags I used. I'm not 100% sure. The reason why I love this is there's no possible way of contamination. This one you have to let it dry out, your soil, and then you have to put it in your own paper bag, and then you've got to mail it. This guy comes with a little kit, and that kit has a little container that you put the soil in, and it's put in a solution. So, I mean, the contamination factor would be very, very low for something like this because of the way that they collect a sample. That's my best guess as to why there was such a big difference. So now that we know what we have going on in the garden, the thing that I'm going to do, because I do have a couple issues, right? This one does show that my potassium is low, but not super low. And I don't want to go crazy like I did last time with this friggin' thing. I want to just add a little bit and see how it does, right? Because the beans aren't showing any kind of issue. So I think that there's still health there, but I do need to bring it up a little bit. So I could use potash, but that's really strong. Instead, I'm gonna use kelp meal. It's an organic nutrient that is derived from kelp in the ocean. So I'm gonna use kelp meal, and I'm gonna put about a pound in each bed. I'm going to add nitrogen. I did add a little bit of nitrogen to these beds back when we were preparing for fall and ripping all the plants out, but I've got to do the rest of the beds. And I'm probably going to go a little bit heavier because the nitrogen count on this test shows me significantly lower. And I'm going into my fall season where I'm growing broccoli and Brussels sprouts, so they need a lot of nitrogen. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I have a lot of items that are in the micronutrient category, like the calcium, magnesium, sodium, iron, manganese, zinc, copper, boron. A lot of these are in the optimal, but there's a few that are in the low, and even the optimal ones are on the low side of the range. So I picked up Whitwam Organics Micro Plus. It's a micronutrient spray. You can use it as a foliar spray, or you can use it as a soil drench. I'm actually going to do a soil drench, and I'm going to give this to all of my beds, just to give them a little boost of extra nutrients in that particular category. It'll bring some of these optimals up to a little bit high of a level, but trust me, last year they were wildly high. So I know that it's not going to be like bad if they get a little on the high side. But I think I only have to do one application of that. So we're going to get those things ready, and we're gonna go and add all these nutrients to the garden. I'll walk you through how I'm gonna do that, how I'm gonna weigh them and everything. But if you are a Florida grower and you have been struggling and you really want to have a good fall winter season this year, make sure to check out my book, Homegrown Florida Gardening Guide. It's on my website, homegrownfloridagarden.com. You can pick this up, 30 chapters with 30 different vegetables, all exactly how to grow them here in Florida, along with all my favorite varieties, pest management, disease management, how to know when to harvest. I mean, everything that you could think of. Container gardening, if I had that question come up. There's a section on container gardening for each one of these chapters. Make sure to get your copy. All right, so we got out, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you know this is like my raised cup that I use to fertilize the beds because it's a perfect measure for everything. It's 3 cups. And for the blood meal, we want 3 cups in each bed. So basically one of these in each bed. I already did like two cups worth, so like that much of this cup in this bed and that bed. So I'm only gonna add a little bit to those. Then I have my kelp meal. This is that low dose potassium that we're gonna go ahead and add to all the beds. I'm probably just going to end up using this whole thing. I believe this was 1 pound. It's probably not enough. I'm gonna have to order some more. And then for the micronutrients, I get this from Whitwam Organics. I really like it. It's Micro Plus, and it has iron, manganese, zinc, copper, and boron. So it's got like all of those mini micronutrients that were a little bit low or within the optimal range. I'm gonna put about 2 ounces, which I believe is 4 tablespoons, into this watering can and then fill it with water. Let's start with the blood meal. Next up is the potassium. Definitely gonna have to buy some more. All right, now it's a good idea to, water all these in, and I thought let's, save some time, and we're gonna do the Micro Plus watering in of all of the blood meal and the kelp meal with the micronutrients. This is gonna go across the whole garden. That's how I measure ounces. I know, not the best way. So we're gonna let that fill up. And while that's filling up, basically we only have 2 beds that we didn't do blood meal with. We did kelp meal over everything, but there's 2 beds with some sweet potatoes, and they're forming roots right now. Putting blood meal, any kind of nitrogen down into the soil right now probably isn't the best idea. So I'm gonna have to come back and fertilize those once those potatoes are out of there, which is fine. I'll write that down so I don't forget. Let's get this micronutrients in on there. So this is a 2.5 gallon water jug, and I filled it up with 2 to 4 ounces. I think I ended up adding 2 more ounces of the micronutrients, and I spread it across 2 beds. So this is a 32 square feet. So an 8x4 foot bed. So that's about 60 square feet is what I'm spreading it out. All right, we got it all done. I am super excited to see how this does. I'm gonna keep an eye, especially on those green beans, to see if they're displaying any issues with like a deficiency to the micronutrients or to the nitrogen or the potassium. So hopefully come fall, we're gonna have a beautiful, abundant garden with no issues. And then I'll be able to for sure know which soil test was the best. But my money's on MySoil at this point. Happy gardening, guys.